This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Perfect Bistro Cat Food. Hey guys, today I'm interviewing my cat about his perfect bistro food. Percy, you seem to be a big Perfect Bistro fan. Care to comment? Totally. What do you like about it? You love the high-quality ingredients? And the delicious flavors, of course. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Listen to Percy, guys. Visit perfectbistro.com to try it for your cat.
You're gonna end up eating a steady diet of government cheese and living in a van down by the river.
Live from the basement of the YouTube headquarters, it's The Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and how do you talk to kids about money? On today's special roundtable discussion, we pair a family money podcast host, a kids and money expert, and a senior in high school to talk all things families, money discussions, and important lessons. And now, a guy who raised 2 kids of his own who somehow turned out okay, it's Joe Saul-CI.
I can't tell you guys how long I've been waiting to have this conversation. So let's meet the participants that are going to help us have better family conversations. First of all, let's go to the woman who I've been working with closely for the past year. She is a senior in high school, about to transition to college. Say hi to the person behind the Liv Lab. Believe it or not, her name is Liv. Crazy. Liv Roeder's here. How are you, Liv?
I'm good. How are you? I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm so happy that you're here. And as you know, we've been planning this for a little while, you and I. But tell everybody about your awesome show that our mutual friend, Doc G, introduced me to, which led to you and I spending a lot of time talking about our podcast together.
Yeah, so I host the Liv Lab, and it is all about careers and setting yourself up as you get into college and even after college. It's a Liv Lab, so we're figuring out life together. I in no way am a professional or know what I'm doing. We're just exploring together.
I absolutely love that. And I love the questions you ask. And isn't it cool that you get to ask some of these pros in different areas, all these personal questions that you wouldn't be able to ask in real life?
Yeah, I love it. And I love it so much because I get to meet so many different people. I get to meet people in finance like you, and then people in various different careers. And just recently, I talked to a communication specialist. I got to talk about communication, so it's so fun.
It is. It's super fun. And every episode is a new adventure. So it's the Liv Lab. By the way, we're going to link to all these awesome folks' stuff on our show notes page at stackingbenjamins.com. Just a couple months ago, you heard from this woman on the show. She is the brain behind the incredible giftingsets.org. Karen Holland joins us. How are you?
I'm good, Joe. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And I'm so happy you and I got to work together in November. And what fun it was helping you get the word out about your amazing tool and the work that you do. And also kind of to beat up on our friends, Joel and Matt, a little bit.
Well, it was a lot of fun. It was probably the biggest, most intensive podcast experience I've had. I enjoyed sharing snippets with my husband and son.
And for people that don't know about you, maybe they're new to the Stacker world, Karen, tell everybody about the important work that you do in teaching kids maybe to make better decisions about money.
Well, I'm really excited to hear about the Liv Lab, Liv, because I think that you and I are totally aligned. Because here's my dream scenario, that when people go to negotiate their position in their first starting salary pay band, they're so comfortable talking about money that they can do it with total ease and comfort. So at giftingsense.org, we help people, parents, teachers, community leaders, any adult, help their kids, students, scouts, whatever it is, learn to think before they buy. And the reason we do this is because early success with pausing, gathering information, and reflecting before spending money really primes the demand pump for the more sophisticated financial information you need later in life when it's relevant and helpful. But the thing is, you don't start with that conversation, right? You don't start saying, now tell me about the starting salary pay bands and where do I sit in them and how do I move through them? That's not the conversation you start with. The conversation you start with is, what do I really want? How much is it going to take? What trade-offs do I have to make? And how much of my own money am I willing to spend? Like the smaller questions, right? But all of those smaller questions have one goal in mind, which is to prepare you to be super comfortable asking the big questions when they matter.
That is specifically, Karen, why I was so happy we were able to partner with you. Your time working with the families and the kids that we're going to be talking about today, I think it's going to be super valuable for our stackers today. Just like Liv, your experience of the last 18 years is going to be super, super helpful to our stackers. And, you know, I needed the guy who talks about this on a wide band then to be a part of this conversation, because while I talk about this at Stacky Benjamins from time to time, he's talking about families and having these conversations nonstop. What would this conversation be like without my better looking, smarter brother by another mother? He's the host of Art of Allowance Podcast. John Lanza is here. How are you, man?
I'm good. The check's in the mail, Joe, for that wonderful intro. I appreciate that.
I've been shaking because I haven't talked to you in about 6 months. So how have you been?
It has been quite a while. I've been great. And now, Karen, I have to say, we were telling jokes about starting salary pay bands at the dinner table last night. So I don't know. I think that just is something we like to do. I'm kidding.
Well, I was going to say, I wondered if your ears were burning on Monday and Tuesday, because I was at a school and a lot of the kids were kind of kvetching that they didn't get allowance. So I was telling the teacher in charge of the grade 8s, I'm like, okay, there are 2 great books, Art of Allowance, The Wisest Investment. I'm like, it doesn't matter if they give allowance for chores, without chores, whatever, just like read these books. They'll really help you because, money's like everything else. You got to practice to get better.
Well, and what's cool, John, that I think about your podcast is when I first heard the name of your podcast, I thought it was all about giving allowances, but it's Art of Allowance, which is a much bigger, you've got this double entendre there on purpose, John.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And it's one of those things that the book kind of put the book out there, but the podcast has really brought it to life, having conversations with you, Joe, with Karen. Maybe at some point we'll have Liv on. It's taken on a life of its own because I learn something new in every conversation. And that's what makes it super fun. And then you can kind of bring it all back together. And hopefully today, some of that I can make some coherent points that might be useful to some stackers out there, but I'll let them be the judge.
I think you're going to be able to do that. I could predict that ahead of time, that I think that's going to happen. Another thing I can predict is that not only we're going to have a great discussion, we have a few sponsors that help us make sure that we can podcast and none of this costs our stackers any money. So we're going to hear from them right now. And then we'll come back as John, Karen, and Liv dive in to help us have better family money conversations and help our kids, our nephews, our nieces, neighborhood kids make better money decisions. Spring cleaning's made its way to my closet. This time of year always makes me rethink exactly what's in my closet. Really want to keep fewer things, but I also want to keep better ones. I want to feel confident, and to feel confident, looking the part's a big piece of that. So I want pieces that are well made and that are easy to wear all the time. And that's why I keep coming back to Quince. The fabrics feel elevated. The fits are thoughtful. Pricing actually makes sense. As I'm swapping out and I'm cutting, the few additions I'm making all come from Quince. Quince makes high-quality, everyday essentials using premium materials like 100% European linen. They're insanely soft, flow-knit activewear fabric. Their men's linen pants and shirts are lightweight, they're breathable, they're comfortable. Basically, the perfect layer for spring. The pants strike the right balance between laid back and refined. If you saw the video of me on stage at Retire Meet, those pants are from Quince. It was really cool. I came off stage and Christine Benz from Morningstar getting ready to go on behind me and said, "Love your pants." Not generally. I absolutely love them. I think they make me look put together without trying too hard. And they're flow-knit activewear, moisture wicking, anti-odor, soft enough that you'll actually want to wear it all day. The best part is their prices This is important, stackers. They are 50 to 60% less than similar brands. How? Quince works directly with ethical factories, cuts out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality, not brand markup. Everything's designed to last and make getting dressed easy, which is another thing I think we all want. I love those pants that I wore on stage. It's the cashmere sweater that every time I wear it, Cheryl goes, that is my favorite sweater on you. It looks great, feels great, and I don't have to have 50 things in my closet. So, like I am, refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/SB for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. Go to quince.com/SB for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/SB. You may not know that when we started Stacking Benjamins, it was a blog. And even then, just the startup cost, I remember thinking, is this the right thing? What if I write things and nobody comes, right? Well, luckily, that didn't end up happening. But starting something new isn't just hard. It's terrifying. There's so much work. You're not sure whether it's going to work out. You're not sure if anybody's going to read it. And then we change it to a podcast. Is anybody actually going to listen, right? What if nobody wants all the stuff that we have? Well, had I used Shopify, it would have been even easier, because with their expertise, their helpful tools, and their easy to use platform, that's something that would have made Stacking Benjamins more effective much, much more quickly. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. Names you've heard of like Heinz and Mattel, Shopify, Gymshark, Aviator Nation, Allbirds, also all Shopify. Get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. And did I mention that iconic purple Shop Pay button? It's used by millions of businesses around the world. It's why Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet. It also helps boost conversions, meaning less carts going abandoned and more sales for you. So you're stacking Benjamins much more quickly. Time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/SB. Go to shopify.com/SB. That's shopify.com/SB. Let's just start with some stories about, money and communication. And Liv, I think I'll start with you. When you think about the first time money felt real in your life, like really, you had this aha that it wasn't just about mom or dad buying something or some relative bringing something to the table. It was money. Do you remember that? Do you remember where you were? What was going on?
I don't think it was one moment specifically, but I think it was just like a gradual as I grew up. My parents never had the sit down conversation of, hey, here's how money works. This is what it was. It was more gradual when I started getting allowances, when I started spending my own money, when I started realizing, okay, what I want has a cost. I can buy everything that I want in a day. When my parents were like looking at different houses to buy, when my brother went to college, seeing how expensive college is, and understanding that money it's not just like a number, but it has like value. It has like a price tag. So I think it was like a gradual like progression, understanding it.
When did your parents get a new house?
For one period of time, we were looking at different houses.
Okay.
We ended up staying in the same house, but then we were looking at like $1 million houses. We would tour houses, and then I would see the coolest house ever, like this amazing house. And I was like, guys, like, let's buy that. Like, that's like such a cool house. They're like, like a bit over our price budget. I was like, what do you mean? Like, this is so cool.
It's funny because I think $1 million in the Bay Area, doesn't that buy like a Subaru down by the beach and you sleep in the back?
It's tiny.
Yeah.
Getting smaller.
It's not much. John, do you remember when money really felt real to you?
The one thing I remember in particular with my parents and money was they wanted me to stop sucking my thumb at like age 7 or 8, right? I was like Linus Van Pelt. And I'm walking, I probably have to explain that. Liv's going to be like, who's Linus Van Pelt? Do you know Peanuts, Liv?
Yeah.
is a great comic strip. So
Yes.
anyway, I was sucking my thumb. So they decided they were going to bribe me by getting me a Lego helicopter. At the same time, they started an allowance with that. And the whole thing just kind of the copter went down like it was Black Hawk Down. Like everything that they had this idea that they were trying to make happen, which was allowance and bribery. And my parents were wonderful, but we never really got the money conversation off the ground from a young age for some reason. And that's kind of stuck in my memory. So it's part of the reason that I kind of got into this whole idea of allowance, because you have to kind of commit to it on a longer term basis. And we didn't really get that opportunity to do that.
It's interesting to me that for Liv, Liv, it felt like your early discussions around money, it was choice and you kind of felt the money pressure, of the family deciding your brother going to college or buying this different house. And for John, I think it's interesting, like the intention of what parents wanted, which often happens, right, with what really ends up transpiring. Karen, what was it for you that you remember early on?
Well, I had a very different experience. My mother was a kindergarten teacher, and she was pretty deliberate about everything. I know that Tim Geithner is credited with plan beats no plan, but I always like to tell everybody I'm pretty sure my mother said it first.
So Tim got it from your mom.
Tim got it from my mom. And the summer between 7th and 8th grade, I have a twin sister. She had my twin sister and I make a list of everything we thought we needed to, go into grade 8 loaded for bear. We went to town, we made this huge list. We thought it was super comprehensive. And we added up all the money we needed to buy that. And she was like, okay, no problem. And she gave us that amount of money, which I think it was $79, which, at the beginning of grade 8, like, why not $1 million, right?
Sure, right.
We're kind of like, why are we even going to school? We're loaded. Okay. Of course, she was so smart because she knew $79 was not enough to get all our back to school clothes and Gia Her Smells Terrific shampoo and Bonneville lip smackers. And I blew it. I bought a pair of burgundy penny loafers. Burgundy's finally back. What is it, like 60 years later, right? Burgundy's made a big comeback this winter. Then I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go to the movies. I couldn't get pizza when it was pizza day in the cafeteria. And I think back to, my mother could have given me another $5 or $10, but she held her ground. And then when you become a parent, you realize how actually hard it is to hold your ground. Like, trust me, Liv, your parents are somewhere going like, oh, is she going to be okay? Like, we really want to give in, but we know if we give in, like, it doesn't serve her long term. Like, it's so hard. I give her so much credit because that was kind of the beginning of the end. And ever since then, my sisters and I can stretch a dollar like nobody. We have one girlfriend who says, you two are Olympic dollar stretchers. And she goes, and I'm not talking silver or bronze, gold.
Values and choices, Mom really taught.
Plan beats no plan.
So money intentionally is spoken in your house, then it sounds like, Karen, like Mom, very intentional about it. Liv, it sounds like parents involving you guys in some of the big decisions, but you and your brother didn't have sit-down meetings with your parents to talk about money at all?
I don't think it was like a sit down, but I think they just served as role models in general, and like the way that they spent and the way they saved. Since I can remember when we would get money from birthdays or from grandparents or for Christmas, I've like always had a bank account. So then we would walk down the street to the bank account, drop it off, and I would always get this little receipt of how much money I had. And at that time, it was just like a number. I didn't understand the value, but just doing that practice over and over. And then I remember one day my mom was like, oh, why don't you save some of that money instead of putting it in your bank account? Why don't you spend it? And I was like, what? Like, no, like I spend your guys' money. My money goes to the bank. Your wallet goes to the store. And my mom was like, no, it's like your money that you can spend sometimes. So it was small moments like that. And then understanding some of the money I want to save up, because I like when the number on the ticket from the bank goes up, but then some money also I get to save and spend.
That is funny because we were having this discussion the other day that when it was my parents' money, that was great. But it was the first time my parents was like, well, you can spend your money. I'm like, whoa, wait, what? What are you talking about here?
When we run parent-child workshops or when we give talks at schools, we say all the time, the quickest way to move the conversation from can I have it to is it worth it is to offer to split the cost. Because kids spend their money very differently than how all of a sudden you're like, maybe not.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the best parts about allowance that parents realize is that when you're shifting the locus of control from you making the decisions to the kid making the decisions, they have the same kind of realization that Liv had, which is it's my money now, and I'm going to spend it much more smartly than I would have spent your money.
John, I think the first time I ever talked about our allowance with our twins was on your podcast. The hard thing about the allowance for me as a parent was giving my kids the ability to mess it up and not say anything, letting them go ahead and make the bad decision. Although I think, and Karen, we'll get into your tool in a second, which I think really would have been forward thinking had that been around when my kids were young. My daughter, I remember one time she bought something at Target that clearly was going to sit on the floor. She was going to use it one time. She was buying something that was just trash. And as a parent, I knew it and I was going to tell her not to do it. And it took so much courage for me to just sit back and let her buy it and put on my calendar for 2 weeks later to circle back and go, hey, where's that thing you bought? And that was for me very, very difficult to do because Karen, I think you said it earlier, you really don't want to see your kids. It's so hard to hold back and to not do that.
I don't. One way I always make the kids laugh in workshop is I'm like, okay, I've got newsflash. Your parents kind of dig you. They actually really want you to be happy. Like it's a blue ribbon day for them when you ask for something and they can say yes. It's actually really hard to have these arguments all the time. Not a good time for them.
Yeah, not at all. Grounding kids, so frustrating. Liv, I have a question for you because you're closest to the ground on this one. When adults talk about money around kids, there's things that adults think that kids hear versus what kids actually hear. What are kids actually hearing when they hear their parents talk about money?
I don't know. I think that's a hard one. But for me, I think how complex it is sometimes. Sometimes when my parents bring up money, it seems kind of straightforward or simple. And maybe that's also because they don't talk about it as explicitly. But then to go to college, you need to fill out all these forms like the FAFSA forms and the CSS forms. And the FAFSA one, I kind of get by on my own. But then there was this other form, the amount of like terms and like numbers on there and like symbols and different questions, I felt lost. The amount of numbers on like tax reports, I like feel lost. And I think just understanding the complexity, it's like I can even wrap my head around that. So in a way, I would say that.
Were you picking up more though? Like your parents are having a financial conversation. Let's say you're driving down the road. Parents are having a financial conversation in the front seat. Are you picking up more about what they're talking about money than they think you're picking up on?
I think sometimes, yeah, but I don't know.
John, you talk about this type of stuff with a lot of guests. You think kids are picking up a lot more of what parents are laying down than parents expect?
I do think so, because I think the key way that we learn as kids and money, or key way all of us learn, is through experience. But the second key one, since I already threw my parents under the bus, and if they listen to this, I'm going to feel real terrible. I do want to say—
They'll be in your memoir, John. They'll be in your memoir.
They were fantastic role models. So I could see the modeling of frugality, which was great, right? So at least maybe I can get some cred back with my parents. But the main thing is your kids are watching that. And there's actually research that says, experience is number one, but learning from what the parents are doing is probably number two. I actually think school is probably number three in terms of actual behavior change, not necessarily in terms of knowledge acquisition, but in terms of behavior change. And so they are very much picking up on what you're talking about, especially just your sense of money. Like, are you positive about money? Are you positive about wealth? Are you negative about wealth? Those things I think really do imprint on kids. But I'd be curious, Liv, did you get a more positive sense of money or a negative sense? And how did that change over time? I'm curious if you had any of those kind of feelings.
I think overall I had a positive sense about money. It was like a tool. Like my parents were never crazy frugal in the sense that money isn't something that you should spend. It's only saving, saving, saving. But they also always had it in mind that it was saving. So I think growing up, yeah, it was overall positive, and we would have nice things. We would go to nice dinners. We would go on vacations, but it was never that scarcity wasn't something that we didn't have to worry about. There was always a limit. And especially now when my brother goes to college and now I'm going to college, it's like this conversation. Oh, how much does a college that you apply to, how much does a college that you're going to cost? if this is a safety school, is this such a high price tag worth it? If it's a better school, how can we make it work? But I think overall, it was a positive sense, in the sense that it's both something that you should save and spend. So finding that balance.
Do you feel pressure to choose a college that is more affordable? Let's say you've got two choices, one that is a private school, costs a lot more money versus a public and state school.
Definitely, 100%. My parents might say, oh yeah, well, if you get into this good school and it's X amount of money, we would still support you. We can pay for it. But it's also like, I don't want to screw them over, like this is money that I'm taking away from like their future, their retirement, what they want. I have goals, but they also do. And if there's another school that costs a lot less, then I'm not going to just say no to that one because there's this other school that I like more. So I think not that there's this sense of guilt, but there's just like the sense of what's the price tag I'm looking at.
You know what? That strikes me as a really healthy sense of awareness. That's exactly where I would want my daughter to be. You get it? You're not going to make a choice based on price alone because those choices don't work either, but you are price aware. I think that's spot on.
And like you said, split the half. If I were to pay, because thankfully I'm in the position where my parents are offering to pay my college tuition, but if I were to need to pay half of the tuition, damn, like would the college I go to, like would that look differently?
That is an important question.
Good question.
And it's a wonderful question to ask. Karen, I'm thinking about the age that your tool is squarely aimed at middle schoolers. Our wonderful intern, Debony, she does some help working with middle schoolers. And she was telling me yesterday how much she dislikes it because she said that they just aren't interested. And I was a guy that met my spouse coaching middle school track. And I remember thinking that when I first started working with middle schoolers that they weren't interested at all. And I found out through 3 wonderful years, they're hella interested.
You got to keep it real. You got to keep it real.
100%.
If it's real, they're in.
And they're hearing about comments about rich people, and people say, quote, rich people, or how their parents are talking about their jobs, or if there's any stress around vacations or holidays, or Liv's talking about, going to college. They're feeling every single feeling. They're just not showing it on their face, I think, like a lot of parents might.
And what we like to say is most family arguments about money really stem from answering the question, what's the big deal, right? What's the big deal? I just want to do whatever. When you take a few minutes, pause, gather information, and reflect, everybody's singing from the same song sheet, and you know what the big deal is. Like you take the example of just an afternoon at the movies. I promise you the big deal is not the $10 movie ticket. It's the fact that you need another $20 for popcorn and soda, and you have to get to the theater and back safely, and your parents might have previous commitments. So it's just getting everybody to understand what the other person has to contend with to execute this transaction. And the beauty of that is when it happens, all of a sudden the kids are like, oh, right. I forgot Graham had soccer. We had to take Nana somewhere. I'll see if so-and-so's parents can drive. That's all it takes. Just walk a mile in someone else's shoes.
What about, Karen, the piece of human development? Sometimes you'll see parents explaining to a kindergartner the logistics of why we can't do X because I don't have money in the bank account. The kindergarten, it's way over their head.
Right.
On the other hand, you see people treating seniors in high school like Liv, like they're a kindergartner. You're like, maybe you should be involving them a little more. How do you know as a parent that you are getting that connection, especially with some middle schoolers that don't show it on their face?
I always like to take the lead from the kids. Like people are always asking me, what's the perfect age? And I'm like, there is no perfect age. I do, however, think there's a perfect time. And the perfect time to talk about money is when your kids want some. That's when they're all ears. That's when they're going to be much more amenable. So the question often dictates how sophisticated the answer could be. It's funny, I was just at a school earlier in the week and at middle school students, and they wanted to start a financial literacy club. And wow, you should have seen the mandate they gave themselves. I mean, I'm not sure Jerome Powell could have handled this in 12 weeks. And I was like, okay. I'm like, you guys are in grade 8. How about we try this frame? Why don't you think back to when you were in grade 5? What did you want to know about money? What were you curious about coming into middle school? And you're going to high school next year. What would you like to know about money going into high school? Why don't we try to frame the club around answering those 2 sets of questions? Take your lead from the kids.
In the second half of today's discussion, what I want to dive into first is kind of a continuation of where we left off and John, I'll let you think about this during the break, which is, because I'm going to start with you because you've had a lot of these conversations, which is this messy piece, right? Is it better for kids to see money work or to see money worry with parents, or is it better to shield them from it? So we're going to start with that when we get back. Then we're going to go age by age. How do we begin having this conversation, Karen, that you're talking about with kids? Maybe, how do I introduce them to money concepts? 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. What do we do then? And then middle school, and then high schoolers. And we'll also, Liv, we're going to dive into your transition, like as we help kids leave the nest, how do we help them become more responsible adults? So that's coming up in just a moment. Dell PCs with Intel Inside are built for the moments you plan and the ones you don't. They're for those all-night study sessions, the moment you're working from a cafe and realize every outlet's taken, the times you're deep in your flow and can't be interrupted by an auto update. That's why Dell builds tech that adapts to you. Built with long-lasting batteries so you're not scrambling for an outlet, and built-in intelligence that makes updates around your schedule, not in the middle of it. Find technology built for the way you work at Dell.com/Dell PCs. Built for you.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Unlike other AI, Slackbot lives in Slack. It understands you, your team, and your work, so you can ask it for help with anything.
Can I ask it to summarize client feedback?
Yes.
Can I ask it to find time for a meeting?
Absolutely.
Can I ask it to turn our meeting notes into a launch plan?
Sure.
Can I ask it to call me the boss?
Actually, you can.
The balls.
See how Slackbot can turn you into
the balls
at slack.com/meet-slackbot.
Hey, this is Tiffany Grant from the Money Talk with Tiff podcast. And when I'm not sprinkling business and money gems everywhere, I'm stacking Benjamins.
I am super happy for the second half of this conversation and really to talk tactics with different age groups. But John, I posed this question before the break. If you're worried about money, is it okay, from all the conversations you've had with so many guests, what do they say about if you're worried about money, if you're not sure you're going to make the rent payment, or, you're not sure if your retirement's okay? Is it okay for your kids to see your money work or to see you worry about money?
Well, you do have to handle it in an age-appropriate manner. If you're worried about making the rent, you don't want to scare your 5-year-old. But I think the best thing you can do is that, first of all, kids are going to know if something's up, right? Because they're going to feel your stress. I mean, I'm sure Liv can attest to this. Like if your parents are stressed, they're stressed, even if they're trying to hide it from you. Actually, the hiding is probably part of the reason that you sense that they're stressed. One of the best pieces of advice I heard from a counselor one time, and I'm forgetting who it was, but I thought it made a lot of sense, which is that just involve the kids in the issues. For example, if you are between work and your income is down, you can talk to your kids about the fact that we may not be able to, go out to dinner. We might have to cut back on certain things. And we might want to, actually, I remember, Joe, you saying that you did this with your kids, where you incentivize them to use less energy in the house by paying them, I think, half of the savings on the bill. It's that kind of idea, which is the kids want to participate in the solution for the family. So figuring out a way, in an age-appropriate way, to recognize they're going to see that you're worried, and then they're going to be a part of the solution to get you to bridge this gap from we're very concerned to we're going to get the ship headed in the right direction again.
I really like that, John, because one family therapist told me that all kids want to know is that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody thinks they're going to live in fantasy land. They know there's an issue and they actually feel empowered when you involve them. And as long as they know that you're going to be okay, you're thinking about a plan, to your point, they can be part of the solution because they do know, and all the secrecy, like what they imagine is 9 times out of 10, 1,000 times worse than reality, right?
Yeah. You hit on such a key word. It's the empowerment side, because that's really what we're talking about in this whole conversation, right? We want to be having these conversations with kids as young as possible so that they feel empowered to be able to come up with the solutions like we just talked about, or in the case that they want something, they have some method of doing it. Gifting Sense helps them do that. I always talk about, like with young kids, to your point, Karen, when they get an allowance, the most attentive they're going to be is when they go to the store, they want something and they don't have the money for it. That's when you set a goal, put a picture of the goal on the jar, and now you're starting this path to learning about how money can be empowering to them.
And then it gets exciting.
The jargon piece, Liv, when you said the FAFSA forms are filled with all these acronyms, like the gold standard for measuring whether or not financial literacy works, the economists call it the intervention works, is this thing called a randomized control trial. So they take 20 kids and 10 kids get the treatment, they get the intervention, they get the class, and 10 kids don't. And then, 20 years later, you compare them, except no parent alive ever wants to put their child in the control group. So it's almost impossible to get a randomized control trial. What I would have loved to have known is if you had been in a mindful spending workshop when you were in middle school and continued to ask questions, if you would have been less intimidated by those acronyms, because you would have had, by this point, years of experience where it's like, I learned vocabulary words in every other subject. Why not personal finance? Because we do find that the jargon's really intimidating, but every subject you take in school has jargon. It's just vocabulary without understanding.
Right.
Yeah, I would say intimidating 1,000%. Like, speaking of finance and all like the different like investments accounts and like stocks and bonds and all this stuff, and even like the basic stuff, I think often finance can be scary and it's intimidating. And in class, we don't have that class. We have history, we have English, we have math, we have biology, but we never have anything about finance. So it's these introductions. And even if we don't remember everything that we learn 100%, it's just becoming more familiar with it. I remember once I sat down at a meeting with my parents and their investment guy, and the guy was like explaining how investments work. If you would have asked me then to explain it, I would have been a lot more confident. Now I'm like, I wouldn't know what to say, but I still think that helped because it makes me feel more confident about finance. And it's like, well, at one point I understood 10% of it. So yeah.
Wait a minute. So I want to pause right here for a minute, because this is fascinating to me, because this is a true concrete answer to my question about how much you involve kids. Your parents had you go to a meeting with their financial advisor.
Yeah, it was last year, not this past December, but the December before in 2024. I was getting interested in finance, and I was talking about it to my parents because I actually heard it from a podcast before I met yours about finance.
Clearly an inferior podcast, some other.
Before I met the best podcast, there was like this mediocre podcast.
There we go.
I started getting interested in investing, and then I talked to my parents about it. That's when they were saying, oh, we invest and we do all of this stuff. So then I met their financial advisor, and I was able to hear kind of more about what my parents do. And then I eventually started investing as well. But I think, Karen, bouncing off of what you were saying, the interest started from me. It was like something I was interested in. My parents like never dragged them to these meetings. It was always something that I knew that they were like doing. And then when I became interested, that's when I got more involved into it.
Karen, you talk about gifting, generosity, and values, and how kids can grasp all these different things. I'm wondering, often, we start these conversations with budgeting, right? The family budget. Mom sits down and talks me through the budget. But is generosity maybe a safer and easier place to begin than budgeting?
Well, people always ask us why we focus on spending. And I mean, of course, there's way more to being good with money than wise spending habits. But that's relevant to kids, right? What do most kids do with the little bit of money that comes their way? They spend it, or they're looking for a way to spend it, or they're hoping to spend it someday. So when we say to them, okay, well, what if we told you there was a way to make sure that however you spend your money, you're going to be happy with that decision? That's the hook, right? Because 93% of kids that we've had in workshops have said they've received a holiday or a birthday gift they did not use or appreciate. So this is happening all the time. And it's not just for financial literacy, to combat climate change. I mean, the planet just cannot sustain these underappreciated gifts. We think, oh, it's one t-shirt from Shine, one pack of pencil crayons or whatever, but there's 66 million school-age children in Canada and the United States. So every 10% reduction in underappreciated birthday and holiday gifts, it's one NFL football field. Let me say it again. one NFL football field less of garbage going into landfills.
I remember my friend Sean Mullaney talking to me about this the first time, talking about just walk into a Target, any Target, and think about the fact that no matter how well we treat all this stuff, someday it's going to end up in a landfill. And then you see all the Targets along the road and the Home Depot next to it and the Lowe's and the Walmart, whatever next to it. You go, oh my, that's a ton of landfills. And just, I love the focusing on what you value aspect of buying less, much more than, just quote being frugal. I think it's so much more.
But we say all the time, I am not in the feel bad about spending business. I'm in the think more about spending business.
Yeah.
I mean, life is no fun if you never have wants. I have wants. I have lots of pretty things, but I just really try to buy stuff that I'm going to use and appreciate, because to your point, otherwise it's just on a short path to a landfill.
Yeah.
Well, what's great about that, Karen, is you are a money expert. One of the difficulties that money experts have is they tend to look at money, in a very scientific manner, very kind of math-oriented manner. And there's an element to that, obviously. But we all interact with money based on how it makes us feel. And the only way we're going to figure this out, because we have to figure it out on an individual basis, is to use it, is to spend it and figure out slowly, like, that made me feel this way. Spending that money and wasting it on something that went to pot, 2 weeks later, that was terrible too. And to Joe's point, he brought up the circle back technique, which is something we talk about now ever since your podcast, Joe. We talk about the circle back technique all the time, which is a great idea, which is you're maintaining the empowerment. Your daughter was buying whatever it was. You wanted to step in, but you didn't. But then you gave her the chance to reflect on that purchase. And in some cases, if you use the circle back technique, the kids will be like, that was great. I got 2 weeks of absolute fun out of that thing. You might have thought it was junk, but it was terrific. In your case, you circled back. And in that particular case, it was not good. But the point is the reflection. And the point is she starts to understand how money makes her feel. And you can only do that by spending and purchasing items and just going through life experience.
Okay, I want to be junior podcaster now, because I'm the only person here who actually doesn't have a podcast. So junior podcaster, Karen Holland.
You're feeling FOMO. That's what's happening,
That's
Karen.
Right. I want to ask all
FOMO.
of you, because everybody's got their answer. What is one purchase that you're like, damn, this is the best money I ever spent. I have just used this thing into the ground, or it makes my life, because that's the feeling that I want you to have with most of your purchases. So what's that thing for you that you're like, I have never spent better money than when I bought X?
Okay, I love snowboarding so much. I wanted to get a snowboard because usually I rent. My parents and I, we split the cost of a snowboard, and I have definitely not regretted it. Just this past weekend, I went and I was like, wow, this is the best thing ever. So yeah, definitely my snowboard.
Joe?
Oh, I was going to let John go. I put John for people not watching the video, I put John up there because I was hoping that I could hide on that one. For me, it is the money that I spend on, so it isn't one thing, but it is one category of things. The money I spend on board games, which are people that know me know how much money I spend on board games. But it's because I value the interaction and us sitting across the table and laughing and having these shared experiences together with no pressure. And frankly, a lot of the time we won't even finish the game, because just sitting down in a very relaxed environment allows me, with a group of people I don't know that well, to all of a sudden have a wonderful conversation over, a foamy beverage or a glass of wine or just the game. And we'll get laughing and talking about stuff. So for me, that's my favorite expense that I think some people don't value.
You get high return on interaction for that.
100%.
John?
I like that. I want to go play some board games now. So
come on, man, let's go. You're all invited.
I would say probably my Kindle, because I use it every day. And that thing, just the returns have been astronomical. So I love my little Kindle.
Okay, so that's the feeling that I would like most people to have after they've bought most things. I want you to just feel like, wow, this was so great. It does what I need it to do, or it helped the person I wanted it to help. I feel so good every time I use it, or I see them using it. That's the feeling that we want to have more often than not.
And I feel like this is where the DIMS score really comes in, because if you're going to have that feeling, you can anticipate it ahead of time. And when you do buy the thing, you have built it up enough in your head ahead of time, which, speaking to former Wall Street Journal personal finance editor, Jonathan Clements, Jonathan said on one of his appearances on Stacking Benjamins that one of the most delicious things you can do is purchase a vacation way in advance of taking it, because the fun of anticipation that you get versus if you go at the last minute makes that purchase so much more. But the DIMS score, you're walking through, Karen, all these reasons why I want it. Man, if it meets all those criteria, then you're laughing when you get that thing. Like you're just absolutely in love with it.
And it's such an easy way to avoid regret too. So many times, because spending is so frictionless today, right? It's buy first, think later. It's quick. It's just not arbitrary, right? You're like, okay, how often am I really going to use it? How much does sales tax and shipping add? You go through this whole thing. And I'm telling you, I see it every week. Half the time the kids are like, wait a minute. Actually, you know what? Pass.
Fabulous.
I love this focus on how it makes you feel, because it's just clicked so much to me. It's like not just about, oh, are these jeans like $70? Is this X amount of dollars? But it's like how it makes you feel. Because, okay, I like shopping. No matter how much I restrict myself from a Target, like if I go and buy something, like I'm going to feel happy, but it's all about this trial and error. Because if I go and if I see something that I really like and I know I'll use it and I buy it, then I'm going to feel good about that purchase. Yes, it was expensive, but it's something that I use so often. But then there's been several times when I go to the store and I think, oh my goodness, this is so cute. Okay, and this, and this. And I have like 5 items that I think are so cute. But in that moment, I'm like, they're cute, they're trendy, I'm going to look so cool at school. But then instead of pausing and thinking, okay, do I need to buy 5 cute things at one time? Most likely not. Instead of doing that, I kind of just like go to the checkout, and it's so frictionless, as you said, just swipe my card and then done, I have it. But then in the end, after a few weeks or so, I'm like, damn, like, should I really have spent that much money? Because now if I want to buy something else, it's like, well, I already just got so much clothes. So I love the idea of it's about how it makes you feel. And then sometimes spending more doesn't give you that good feeling. It actually gives you that bad feeling.
And on those big purchases like college too, I mean, we spoke about this earlier. Liv, you were talking, and Karen, you pointed out all these acronyms and all the stuff. Like you get time to get comfortable with all of the things around these major purchases. And those acronyms, by the way, never go away. It's not just the FAFSA. We struggle with Roth IRA and 401k. If somebody's listening for the first time, they're like, 401k, I can't run that far. Like, no way. That's way too far. It's so frustrating, the acronyms and the jargon that's just built into everyday financial talk. Let's talk about different ages. Let's go to John with this one. John, what does a healthy money conversation sound like with a 6-year-old?
6-year-old, you probably will have started an allowance. When you do that, you really want to be very clear to say, listen, I'm giving you this money. Let's just say it's $6 a week. I'm giving it to you to teach you to learn how to use money, to see how it makes you feel, to get some of the things that you want. And then you put it into like 3 jars, and they start to understand that they have to make decisions when they get money. All you're really doing is just telling them, this is money. I'm here to help you. You're going to use this money to get stuff you want. To Karen's point, that's what they care about. What can I do with this money? And we will talk about it. The other thing I think that's good is, surprisingly enough, at that age, you can even begin to negotiate with them. If they feel like they want to make a case that they should be getting $7 a week, great. Take that as an opportunity. Doesn't mean you give in, but you can have a conversation about why that might happen. And then you can kind of step up the allowance from age 6 to 7 to 8. It's kind of like the starter allowance. But more than anything, it's just opening up. You're making money a totally non-taboo subject, right? You're empowering the conversation around money. And it's surprising how much these kids will understand and be ready, because, to Karen's point again, money gets them the things that they want. And that's empowering for them.
Around the negotiation, I don't know if this is good or bad. I'm not an expert in this area. I just thought this was funny. This one very bright young woman told me in an interview a long time ago that what her dad did was he would post all these different jobs on a job board, and his kids would bid on the jobs. They would bid against each other for the jobs. And then they realized that if they colluded, which was exactly what dad wanted, if they colluded, they get more money out of dad's pocket. So they began to learn to work together versus work against each other when they were bidding for the jobs. I thought, so when you were talking about negotiating, John, I thought about that immediately.
Well, this is the thing about being a parent, and now my kids are now 22 and 20, You hear ideas every day like, oh man, I wish I could have implemented that idea. It was such a good one.
And then they start to repeat it back to you. My son's 26 and now, he'll say things to Mark and I'm like, oh man, like, I got no moves because I know exactly where that came from.
Well, Karen, let's ask you this one because same question, but for middle schoolers, what's a healthy money conversation sound like with a middle schooler?
If you want something, what are you willing to do to get it? What are you going to give up? What will you help out with? What's a reasonable trade-off in your mind? It's just practicing making trade-offs, practicing making choices. We practice our times tables. We send all our kids to driver's ed. Liv, your parents probably sent you to driver's ed, right? And why is that? Why did they send you to driver's ed?
So they don't have to teach me how to drive.
Well, that's a symptom maybe, but they wanted you to have foundational skills and awareness.
Yes, also that.
Before you took 3,000 pounds.
That's what I meant to say.
Before you took 3,000 pounds of steel and glass on the road. We want middle school students to have foundational skills and awareness about the components of a well thought out decision so that when the decisions are higher stakes, they're really comfortable evaluating alternatives.
Liv, you are just exiting this part, so I'll ask you this one. What's a healthy conversation with a high schooler look like when talking about money?
I think one thing that has been super helpful, and not all high schoolers can do this at the beginning, but definitely at the end, is getting a job, because then it's suddenly you have a source of income that isn't your parents. So if you do want to negotiate, it isn't anymore, Dad, can I have like an extra $20? Dad, can I have like an extra $30? It's talking to your boss and like talking about that negotiation. And now suddenly you have, and often then you are going to get a larger paycheck and then understanding, okay, it's time to start saving up. How can I start saving this? But I also want to spend. How can I start spending this? Because now you have such bigger expenses that you want to buy and things you want to do. So then also having like this paycheck of your own. And now it isn't anymore money coming from my mom and dad. It's my own money. So then it's using these lessons and growing them to a bigger playing field.
Do you expect your parents to help you then if that money came from your paycheck? Or is that mom and dad hands off? That's all mine.
When I'm buying something?
Yeah, about making good decisions about that money that you brought in from your job that you had in high school.
Oh, I think it's a mix. I think if I want to buy something that they think is like ridiculous at the end of the day, I can make that money and I might learn that lesson from it. But they'll also say like, hey, like maybe you shouldn't buy that. And it's also the way they spend money. It's like they think about their decisions before. And like with my experience, when I don't think about my decisions, then I end up regretting it after. I think it's definitely a mix. It's like at the end of the day, it's my choice, but they definitely have their input.
John, I talk to older people about, teaching kids about money, and they talk about like when my kids were young and your kids were young, I was teaching them the difference between like a penny and a dime and a nickel and, and these different, just because a nickel's bigger than a dime doesn't mean it's worth more, which was a big aha. Parents aren't dealing with that anymore. They're dealing with the fact that you go to Starbucks and you put your phone against a machine and all of a sudden I get this drink. How are you helping kids deal with the frictionless nature of money?
It's a great question, particularly because you have so many places where you can't use cash. But I still think right now, this advice will probably change over the next 10 years, but I still think when you start young, you're much better off using dollars and cents for a few reasons. One, we know from research and we just know from personal experience, it's harder to part with physical dollars than it is with digital dollars. It's also when you do the allowance, that physical moving of things into different jars, like the share and the save and the spend smart, you're trying to teach them about making choices. So I think it's best to do the cash if you can, as long as you can. But there's definitely a case to be made. I talked to Chelsea Brennan, who's the smart money mama, and she had green light cards for her kids at ages 7 and 4. And her logic was she did not want to miss allowance time. She wanted to be consistent with the allowance. And that made some sense. She had already been talking to the kids about money. She has them moving the money on the cards into their different envelopes. So I think a combo is certainly, it's going to move more digital than physical as the years progress. But to the extent you can, do as much of it physical young for as long as you can. And then most likely they're either going to ask for a digital card or some method of paying digitally, or you're just going to be like, as a parent, it's just so much easier. I can get the money to you faster. They can pay, and they need to be digitally empowered as well. So that's good. But starting with cash early, probably the best idea. I see Karen nodding. I think she probably would agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, the frictionless spending environment is just so tough, right? And the speed at which we make any decision now is so much faster than what it used to be. And it's not because the species has evolved, it's our environment, right? This is why I'm such a big believer in imprinting this habit of pausing before we make decisions, because if you don't do it young, it's not impossible to embrace later, but it's a lot harder. And if we just take a beat, I mean, parents and school administrators are often worried that when we run these workshops, the kids are going to want to buy things that the family can't afford. And I'm like, I don't know everything, but I promise you, I've been doing this so long. Kids stop themselves. They are so capable of making terrific decisions when we give them a tool that helps them practice pausing, gathering information, and reflecting before they make the decision. They just need the tiniest bit of infrastructure and they'll blow you away every time. They'll hardly ever let you down.
That was what was amazing that I was telling my intern about middle schoolers, Karen. She's like, they're just not paying attention. I'm like, they are paying so much attention. And the degree to which I would ask them to jump and they would jump way higher than as their track coach. It was amazing how great these kids were.
Here's my mic drop on how much attention they're paying. We had an 8th grade boy calculate the doesn't make sense score for buying Greenland.
That's great.
They are paying
Is it too
attention.
Too soon?
They are paying attention.
Oh, that's fantastic. I want to ask one more thing because I was curious about this, even as we were just signing on today. If families focused on just one money skill versus trying to teach everybody everything, what's the one money skill you think? You got to choose one, Liv. Which money skill do you think families should be teaching?
Okay, not sure how concrete this is, but I would say awareness, being aware of what's coming in, what's coming out. I'm not a huge budgeter. I don't have a big budgeting planner, but I started getting into the practice. At the end of every month, I go through my bank account and it lists it out nicely what I spent, everything I spent in the category. And I'll sum up all the categories and I'll see, wow, this month I spent $60 on Starbucks. And then by giving me space, I think of questions saying I could have spent that on a good pair of jeans, but no. So it's reflecting and being aware of how much I spent and how much I'm making. So I'd say awareness.
That's kick-ass, awareness and cash flow management.
Yes.
Karen?
Well, it's the same answer as Liv's. I would just use different words. Think before you buy.
Mm-hmm. John?
Those are great answers. I think one of the things that you can start early to try to build a habit would be on the kind of portion saving side of things. So saving a bit of everything you make. So you're kind of instilling this idea of paying yourself first with kids. And that's the idea when you have 3 jars, making sure that they're putting some money into the save jar as just a habit that they can pay attention to and be aware of. And every kid's going to deal with it differently, but at least they have an awareness that this is probably a good thing to do. And when it comes time for bigger money decisions, when they have a job, hopefully they'll follow that advice or follow the path that you've laid for them.
The saving thing is so great because compound interest is technically, it's too complicated when they're little, but I wish we could show the curve to all these kids, and say, okay, listen, Warren Buffett's made 90% of his money since, his 65th birthday?
Yeah, right.
I mean,
yeah, using those calculators of if I invest now, how much money will I have when I retire? That was a game changer for me. That was wow, now that I'm young, now that I can know about finance, this is when it matters.
I used to go talk at high schools and we would get questions ahead of time. And 90% of the questions we get from high schoolers were variations of the phrase, how do I get into debt up to my eyeballs? It was, how do I afford a house? How do I afford a car? How do I afford how do I take out loans? How do I qualify for more loans? Almost 99% of the questions were there. And it was funny speaking with my friend, Jean Natali, who teaches a lot of stuff in Pittsburgh. Jean said it was amazing when you turn that into discussions about the Roth IRA and about how if you just put a little money in the Roth IRA when you're 18, you could be a millionaire. And he said it would blow kids away. And all of a sudden, all the questions about getting into debt just went away on their own. And all of a sudden, they were very focused on how do I make money hand over fist as fast as I can?
Yeah. Gene is a very nice man, and I love what they're doing at Troutwood.
Yeah, it is some super work.
I have to jump in just quickly on this because your point about what Gene makes and you going to high schools, because the thing that you have, Liv, over all of us is that factor of time, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You don't need intelligence. You don't even need that much money because you have so much time on your side. So when people your age start investing, it's like Morgan Housel made a great point. It's like, if Warren Buffett had stopped investing, he started investing at 11 and he's still investing. That's why we're talking about him. That is the reason. Yes, he's a genius, but we're talking about him because he's been investing for 80 years? It's crazy.
Yeah, long, long time. John, another thing, not an endorsement. Back when I was a financial planner, one of my wonderful creative parents did was that saving jar, John, that you talk about and getting kids saving at an early age. He would give them an allowance and then he would withhold the saving part and call it taxes because he wanted his kids to get angry about the part that was being withheld and to ask the question, how do I minimize my taxes from an early age? Again, no endorsement, but I thought that was pretty.
Bill Murray used to say the easiest way to teach kids about taxes is to eat 30% of their ice cream.
And don't even ask, just reach in.
Yeah, no, you just like, oh, I want to taste that. Yeah.
The claw.
That is so funny. Well, fantastic discussion. And I'm so happy that you all are doing what you do and able to help so many of our stackers today. Let's find out what's going on where you live. And again, I will be linking to all this wonderful stuff that you do on our show notes page at stackingbenjamins.com. But Liv, we'll start with you. Thanks for joining us. I'm so happy we finally got this done. What's coming up at the Liv Lab?
Of course, I have a few more interviews coming up. We release every other week. And most recently, I had an amazing talk with Carmine Gallo. He's a Harvard professor and he mastered communication. And now I always rethink how I'm talking and how I'm communicating. So I got to learn how to talk.
That's so cool. Carmine is I wouldn't call him a close friend, but is a friend. And his Talk Like TED book is talking about
a new one coming out.
Amazon, and what a wonderful guy. By the way, the first book I was ever quoted in was in Carmine's book, one of Carmine's early books. Yeah, which was really cool. So Carmine Gallo, man, you're getting phenomenal. That's incredible. That's a get.
Yeah, it was so fun.
Speaking of a get, it's always great getting Karen Holland. How about that segue, huh? On the show. What do you got going on in gifting sense?
We are building 2 new DIM score calculators. We've had a lot of demand for these over the years, so we're working really hard on them, and we're hoping to have them available for Financial Literacy Month and just doing workshops and educator webinars. We just did an educator webinar for the Council for Economic Education. What I love about working with them is they record them and put the recording on the Econ Ed link and all of your slides. So everybody, like everything you need is right there. And on the site, giftingsense.org, we have a For Parents page and a For Teachers page.
Fantastic. And you know, it's funny. I learned as much on the For Middle Schoolers page as I learned on the other. And by the way, I'm not ripping the For Parents page. It's awesome stuff. But man, some of these just, you know, when I get the latest board game, I'm like, I should buy that. I go the DIMS and I'm like, damn it, maybe I should wait.
Does it make
maybe I have enough, which is an annoying answer, but it's probably the right one.
What hole does that board game fill? That's the question you ask yourself. What hole is that board game filling?
And I will always find like some spot where I can justify that purchase. I am very good at that. John Lanza, great seeing you again, my friend. What's coming up at Art of Allowance?
We're going to be having a conversation about investing for parents and kids. I'm sure we'll touch on Roth IRAs, 529s, and the new Trump accounts that are coming out. So we'll hit on all of those, and that's going to be coming out in the next few weeks, which is exciting. And I hope that Karen's new gifting sense is going to be made for kind of the over 50 set. Do you have one of those coming out, Karen?
You know, I have so many parents coming to me. Well, first of all, everybody says that their spouse needs it, not them, you understand.
Right.
They've got it under control, but let me tell you, my partner, they need some help. People of all ages can use it. If it helps, we're happy.
That's fabulous. And the Art of Allowance and the Liv Lab available where finer podcasts, only the finest podcasts, are listened to. All right, guys, that's going to do it. I'm going to pass this back to Doug, who I'm sure has been listening into this entire conversation. Doug, what are the 3 things that should be on our to-do list at the end of today's show?
So what's stacked up on our to-do list for today? Well, first, take some advice from Karen Holland. Asking yourself, does it make sense before purchases is a great way to start any money conversation with a child. Second, take some advice from John Lanza. Money conversations begin by being open and honest, not by feeling like you have to be perfect with money. Get the whole family involved and you'll soon have a money-savvy family. But the big lesson, don't ask Joe's kids for a loan. I asked Joe's son Nick for $10, and I swear that guy's a loan shark. 2 shrimp appetizers next Friday at the Sizzler just for a 10 spot, Nick? Dang, kid drives a hard bargain. All right, I'm up against it. I'm in. You win. Thanks to the amazing Livia Roeder for joining us today. You'll find her incredible show, The Liv Lab, wherever you find shows hosted by brilliant teenagers. We'll also include links in our show notes at stackingbenjamins.com. Speaking of brilliant, thanks also to John Lanza for hanging out with us today. You'll find his fabulous podcast, Art of Allowance, wherever you listen to finer podcasts. And finally, thanks to Karen Holland for joining us. Find her Does It Make Sense tool and more at giftingsense.org. Thanks for helping us raise lots of money last fall to help Karen's mission, too. This show is the property of SB Podcast, LLC, copyright 2026, and is created by Joe Saul-Sehy. You'll find out about our awesome team at stackingbenjamins.com, along with the show notes and how you can find us on YouTube and all the usual social media spots. Come say hello. And oh yeah, before I go, not only should you not take advice from these nerds, don't take advice from people you don't know. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any financial decisions, speak with a real financial advisor. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and we'll see you next time back here at the Stacking Benjamin Show.